Picture a wheat field so wide and so flat that standing in the middle of it, you cannot tell where the land ends and the sky starts. A field that in 1929 made this family $400 in a single harvest. A field that made this county the breadbasket of America, that fed cities whose names these farmers had never heard, that made men who had grown up with nothing feel, for just a few years, like they might actually be okay. Now fill it with dust, not movie dust, not the kind of dust you wipe off a shelf and forget about. I mean dust that gets into your lungs and stays there. Dust that strips the paint off your truck in an afternoon. Dust that buries fence posts up to the top wire overnight, so that in the morning you wake up and where there was a fence there's just a smooth brown slope, and your cattle are gone because they walked right over it in the dark. Add the smell of it, like pennies and dry bone and something burning that isn't quite burning. Add the static electricity that stands your hair on end and kills your car engine and makes the metal handle of your front door spark blue when you touch it. Add the sound of it, not the Hollywood howl of a single wind, but a constant grinding, patient hiss that you hear in your sleep, in your teeth, behind your eyes. A sound like something being slowly erased. That's the Oklahoma Panhandle, that's southwestern Kansas, that's the Texas Panhandle and eastern Colorado, and the corner of New Mexico that nobody visits. That's the Dust Bowl, the most productive farmland in human history. Turn it into a desert in under 5 years. A place where you could eat a meal in the morning and chew grit with every bite. Where you could plant a field in spring and watch the topsoil blow to Missouri by summer. Where children died of something the doctors called dust pneumonia, which is exactly what it sounds like, which is to say, it sounds like drowning on dry land. We are going back there tonight. Not as visitors looking at photographs of hollow-eyed women and rusted machinery and drifts like frozen waves. Not as people who read about it in a textbook and felt sad for a few minutes before turning the page. We are living it. One family, one decision, and all the days that led up to it. Everything they touched and smelled and endured and finally could not endure anymore. I make these history stories and honestly I never know exactly who is listening. Maybe you are trying to sleep and the ceiling is not helping. Maybe you are one of those people whose grandparents actually lived through this, and you want to understand what that meant in their bodies, and not just the sepia version in photographs. Maybe you just like hearing about disasters from a comfortable distance. Either way, get comfortable. Here we go. Your boots hit the floor before you're fully awake. That is not a choice. That is what years of farming does to you. Your body knows that light, any light. Even the grey-brown murk that passes for dawn out here now means work. Means you are already behind. Means something has probably gone wrong in the night, and you had better go see what. You sit on the edge of the bed and breathe. The first thing you notice every morning before you open your eyes, before you put your feet on the floor, is the taste. Grit, fine as talcum powder, in the back of your throat, in the soft membrane of your nose, coating your tongue like you spent the night chewing a handful of soil, which is almost exactly what you did, because there is no keeping it out. You stuffed rags into the windowsill last night. You ran a wet sheet across the bottom of the door. You did everything the county agent told you to do, everything the radio said to do. The dust still got in. The dust always gets in. You spit into your hand and look at it in the dim light. Brown. Everything is brown out here now. Your spit, the water in the wash basin, the snow when it comes in winter. Not white, brown, because the dust rides every weather system and colours everything it touches. You have not seen clean white snow in 3 years. The year is 1935. The month is March. You're 23 years old, which means you came of age during the worst agricultural disaster in American history, which means you do not entirely remember what normal looks like anymore. Your name is Elias Cutter. You were born 2 miles south of Boise City, Oklahoma, in Cimarron County, in a farmhouse that your grandfather built with his own hands in 1906 when the government was giving away 160 acres to anyone willing to bust sod and stay. He stayed. Your father stayed. You were supposed to stay. You spit again. Get up. The floor is cold. Not the pleasant cold of early morning, the kind that wakes you clean. This cold has grit in it too. The boards creak under your weight. Same creak your father's weight made. Same creak your grandfather's made before him. The floor knows you, all 3 of you. You drag your hand along the windowsill and the pad of your finger comes back with a fine brown film. The film that is there every morning, no matter what your mother does, no matter how many rags she runs along the sills the night before, no matter how tightly the windows are sealed. The dust is not coming through the windows. The dust is coming through the walls themselves, through gaps in the wood that no amount of caulking can close permanently, because the wood keeps drying out and cracking, and the gaps keep returning. The house is breathing dust the same as you are. Outside the window, the sky's the colour of old tobacco, that brownish grey that used to mean weather coming, but now just means morning. Sunrise over the Oklahoma Panhandle looks nothing like it did 5 years ago. 5 years ago there was a horizon, blue sky above, green wheat below, and the line between them clean and certain. Now the sky and the ground are the same colour, and the horizon has disappeared into haze so total that you've almost stopped noticing it. Almost. Your mother's already in the kitchen. You can hear her, the sound of the cast-iron skillet on the stove, the creak of the pump handle, the small domestic sounds of a woman who has decided that keeping house is an act of faith. Even now, even here, even when the house she is keeping fills with dust no matter what she does. She's up at 4 every morning, 4 o'clock before the wind really starts moving, so she can wipe down every surface in the kitchen. The table, the chairs, the counter, the window sills, the tops of the cans on the shelf. Dust settles overnight in layers, thin as cigarette paper but relentless. And if you do not deal with it first thing, by noon the kitchen looks like something excavated from a ruin. She has done this every day for 4 years. She will do it tomorrow. You pull on your work shirt. The fabric is stiff with it. Dust, sweat, dust, over and over, until the fibres of the shirt are half cotton and half Oklahoma. Your hands find the buttons by feel. Your left thumb has a crack in the skin at the first knuckle that has not healed since November. In this climate, nothing heals. Your skin is like the earth, cracked, dry, too tight for its own structure. You've tried the petroleum jelly your mother keeps by the stove. It helps for an hour. By evening the crack is open again, and the dirt has gotten in, and at night it burns with a low insistent heat that keeps you just awake enough to notice. In the kitchen your mother looks at you the way she's been looking at you for months. Not quite pity, not quite fear. Something between the two that has no name in English, though you suspect there might be a word for it in one of those old European languages that some of your neighbours' grandparents brought with them. Words for feelings that the prairie specialises in. Grief that is not grief yet. Anticipation of a loss that is not loss yet. Watching something approach that you cannot stop. Coffee's up, she says. She means it is hot and brown, and that is the extent of its relationship to actual coffee. She stretches the can as far as it will go, grounds used twice, 3 times, sometimes 4, so that what comes out of the pot is the ghost of coffee, the memory of coffee. But it is hot. You wrap your hands around a mug and let the heat work into those cracked knuckles, and you drink it and say nothing. "Pa up?" you ask. She shakes her head. He was up past midnight. You heard him. The sound of boots on the floorboards below your room. Back and forth, the slow, unhurried pacing of a man who cannot sleep because sleeping means stopping thinking, and stopping thinking means the thoughts are still there when you wake up. You've heard that pacing for months. It has worn a path in the floorboards that you could find in the dark. Your father is 49 years old. He looks 65. The last 2 years have done something to him that you do not have a word for. Something gone slack behind his eyes. Something held very tight inside the chest that used to be loose, used to laugh, used to carry you on his shoulders when you were small enough for that. He is in there, behind the grey and the slack and the sleepless eyes. But he is very quiet in there now. You drink your not coffee and look out the kitchen window at the brown sky. Somewhere out there, under that sky, are 160 acres that your grandfather claimed, and your father improved, and that you were supposed to inherit and work for the rest of your life. Somewhere under 4 feet of drifted topsoil along the north fence line are the winter wheat seedlings you planted in October. Maybe they are still alive. You'll go look in an hour. You'll dig down through the drift with your hands if you have to. Probably they are dead. They was probably dead in November. Your mother puts a bowl of cornmeal mush on the table. She sits across from you and folds her hands around her own mug and does not eat yet, just holds the warmth. "The Hendersons went," she says. Just that. Flat. The way you announce weather. The Hendersons went. The Hendersons were 3 miles north. Walt Henderson and his wife Doris and their 4 kids, the youngest of which was born the year the drought started, who has never known a normal year, who's grown up breathing brown air and eating half rations and watching her parents go old fast. They went, as in, loaded what they could into the truck, sold what they could not load for whatever anyone would give them, nailed a board across the door, and headed west on Route 66. Same as the Parkers last fall. Same as the Kowalski family in the spring of 1934. Same as the Jensens and the Torbets and the Dawsons and, by the count you've heard at the feed store and the church. Something like 100 families out of Cameron County in the last 2 years. 100 families. 1 county. Walt said California, your mother says. California. The word has weight out here now that it does not have in other places. It means different things to different people. To some it means salvation, oranges and steady wages and rain that falls when it is supposed to. To others it means running, means giving up, means letting the land win, letting the bank win, letting the whole relentless accumulation of bad luck and bad weather and bad prices prove something you do not want proved. Your father comes downstairs at 6. He's dressed but not shaved. His face has the grey look of a man who slept badly. He sits. Your mother puts a bowl in front of him. He looks at it. Radio says there is a front moving in from the northwest. 3 days. Nobody says anything. 3 days of wind means 3 days of dust, means you stay inside and stuff rags in the windows and try to sleep and wake up tasting the same grit you fell asleep tasting. Need to get into town anyway, you say. Get a look at the seed catalogue. Your father looks at you, just looks at you. He does not say what the look means, but you know. Seed catalogue. For what? to plant what, in what soil, with what rain that is not coming, for what market that is not there. But you say it anyway. Because saying you're going to look at the seed catalogue means you are someone who is planning to plant, and planning to plant means you believe there is a next season. And believing there is a next season is, right now in March of 1935 in Cimarron County, Oklahoma, a political act, a declaration. Your mother does not look at either of you. Outside, the wind is picking up. From the west, as usual. It always comes from the west on the plains. It has always come from the west. But now, instead of carrying water vapour and the scent of rain, it carries topsoil from Colorado, from Kansas, from the fields that you and your neighbours ploughed under to make money that turned out not to be there. The dust that coats your window sills and your skin and the inside of your lungs is not local. It came from somewhere. Somebody's field, somebody's ruined hope, blown 300 miles and deposited here, and your topsoil has blown 300 miles the other direction. There is a constant invisible exchange happening, and nobody gets richer from it. You finish your mush. Pull on your coat. The coat that used to fit correctly, before you lost the weight you have lost since last summer when the crops failed again, and the cattle started dying, and meals got smaller in the incremental, deniable way that families manage these things when nobody wants to say it out loud. You have punched 2 new holes in your belt with the awl from your father's toolbox, and they are not the work of a man who expects to be this thin permanently. They are the work of a man who expects things to improve, or tells himself they will. The barn is 30 feet from the house. In a normal year, 30 feet is nothing. You cross it in the time it takes to finish a thought. In a bad storm, 30 feet is too far to walk safely without a rope tied to the house. The dust can be so thick that you lose your direction completely. Men have died in their own yards, 20 feet from their own front doors, because the dust blotted out every reference point and they walked in circles until they fell. You keep a rope tied to the porch post all the way to the barn door. You have not needed it in 3 weeks, but it is there, sun-bleached and gritty, looped around the nail your mother drove in the winter of 1933 when the first bad ones started coming. She drove the nail. She strung the rope. She did not explain why, did not make a production of it, simply did the thing that needed doing the way she always does. You think about that sometimes. The particular competence of women who are not allowed to fall apart. This morning the sky is bad, but the air is still enough. You make the barn without the rope. The barn door sticks. It always sticks now. The frame warped by heat and dryness. The wood losing its moisture the same as everything does out here. You put your shoulder into it and it grinds open and the smell hits you. Cattle. Or the memory of cattle. You had 12 head in the fall. You have 4 now. 2 sold at the county sale in December for less than what it cost to haul them there. The rest, 2 old cows and a bull that was already thin, died when the tank froze and the feed was gone and there was not enough in the world to keep them alive. You found the bull one morning with his legs folded under him in the back stall and the 2 cows within the week, and you stood over each one of them with the particular hollow feeling of watching something you were responsible for fail to survive. The 4 that are left are in the back stalls. They smell like hunger. Animals smell different when they're starving. Something in their breath changes, something sweet and wrong, like overripe fruit. The smell has gotten into the walls and stays there. You fork the last of what passes for hay into their stalls. Not enough. You can see it is not enough. The nearest cow turns to look at you with those enormous brown eyes, and you look back and there is an understanding between you that is not comfortable. You check the water trough. Ice this morning, a thin skin that you break with your elbow. The water underneath is the colour of weak tea. You've had to explain to the new hired man from 2 counties over. Though you no longer have a hired man, he left in January, that this is what water looks like out here now. That brown is the colour of water here. That you do not filter it. You do not have a filter. You just drink it, and you get used to it, and eventually you stop noticing the taste the same way you stop noticing the smell and the grit, and the absence of everything that used to be here. You patch a loose board on the south wall, driving the nail with 3 hard blows, each one sending a small percussion through the walls that makes the cattle shift. Your wrists ache from the cold. Your thumbnail took a glancing blow from the hammer last week, and the nail is still black and tender. There is always something to fix on a farm. In good years, fixing things is just part of the rhythm, the constant maintenance that keeps the whole operation running. You fix the fence and fix the engine and patch the roof, because if you do not, small problems become large ones, and large ones become catastrophic ones. You learn this young. Every farmer's son learns this. What nobody teaches you is what to do when you're fixing things on a farm that might not exist in 6 months. You keep fixing it anyway, because what else do you do? Because your grandfather built this barn and your hands know where every nail goes, and stopping would mean something you're not ready for it to mean. Town is 12 miles east on a road that was never great and is now, with the drifts and the erosion, actively hostile. The truck, a 1928 Ford Model AA, black with a cracked windshield on the passenger side, runs rough in cold weather. You let it warm up for 5 minutes in the yard, listening to it cough and settle, watching the exhaust trail east in the wind. The road to town runs straight. You can see Boise City's grain elevator from 3 miles out on a clear day, or you used to be able to. Now there is enough suspended dust in the air that the elevator appears and disappears depending on the wind, a grey column that materializes and then goes soft and vanishes again, like something from a dream that you keep almost seeing. You pass the Hendersons' place. You do not mean to look. You look anyway. The house is still there. Houses do not leave. But there is something different about a house with people in it and a house without. You can see it even from the road. The windows are dark. The pump in the yard is still. The chicken coop door is swinging open on its hinge, a black rectangle in the brown landscape, going back and forth in the wind with a small rhythmic creak that you can hear when you cut the engine to listen. Which you do, for just a moment, idling in the road, that creak, the sound of something moving with nobody to notice it. Walt Henderson's fence is half buried. 3 years ago he put in new posts, cedar from the lumberyard in Boise City, set them deep, strung tight wire. You can see the top wire now, and then a drift rising to meet it. And on the other side the fence continues, but the posts are buried to their tops. You could walk over that fence without bending your knee. Walt Henderson's fields look like the surface of the moon. You keep driving. In town, Main Street is quieter than it used to be. The Rexall has paper in one of its windows, the glass having gone sometime last fall, broke in a storm, and the owner could not afford to replace it. The paper flaps and shifts in the wind. The diner has a closed sign on more days than not. The hardware store has merchandise in the window that has been there since 1933. The dust accumulating on it in layers that have their own geological logic, the oldest layers dark and compacted at the bottom, the newer layers pale and soft on top. There are cars on Main Street, fewer than they used to be, and the ones that are there are loaded. You notice this before you consciously register it. The shape of a loaded car is different from an empty one. The rear sits low. Things are tied to the roof, furniture and mattresses and cardboard boxes that represent the distilled essence of a family's life. Trunks roped shut, spare tyres wired to the running boards. You count 4 loaded cars on your way to the feed store. One of them is the Dunlap car. Bill Dunlap, his wife Clara, their 2 children. You go into the feed store. It smells like grain and oil and the particular dusty dryness of a building that has absorbed 10 years of good harvests and is now absorbing the end of them. The owner, Roy Abercrombie, who everyone calls Crom, is behind the counter with his elbows on the wood and a look on his face that has been there since about 1932. There are 2 other men in the store. Gerald Pace, who farms the section east of your family's place. Harold Mott, who drives a truck part-time now because his fields are under 3 feet of drifted soil. You nod at them. They nod back. Dunlap's going, Crom says, because he knows you saw the car. I saw. Henderson's went yesterday. My mother told me. Harold Mott says nothing. Gerald Pace shifts his weight from one boot to the other. County says there might be work through the New Deal program, Gerald says. Planting grass on the erosion land. Planting grass, Harold says it the way you might say something you've heard before and do not entirely believe. County agent says so. The county agent also said we would have rain by October. Nobody says anything to this. You look at the seed catalogue on the counter. Last year's, the cover soft with handling. How is your winter wheat? You ask Gerald. Dead, he says. Simply, just that. We might have some still. I've not dug down to check. Check, Gerald says. If it is dead, do not put in the spring sorghum. Save the seed money. I put in 40 acres of sorghum in 34. Lost every bit to the June duster. 40 acres and I got nothing. I cannot do it again. You hear this and file it away. Gerald Pace is not a man who wastes words. When Gerald Pace says cannot, he means something specific about what a human being can absorb before something in them breaks. Where are you on your loan? Harold asks. There it is. The question everyone has been not asking for 2 years, because asking it out loud means you are calculating whether it is time to go. Your family owes the First National Bank of Boise City $400. The loan your father took in 1931 to buy a new disc plough. The loan that made sense in 1931 when the rain still sometimes came and the wheat still sometimes grew, and $400 was not an impossible number. The loan that now, with no crop and no income and the bank sending letters with increasing frequency, means something different than it did when he signed his name. We are managing, you say. Harold nods, not surprised. Every man in this county gave the same answer when someone asked him 6 months ago, a year ago. We are managing, right up until the morning they load the truck. Outside, you sit in the Model AA for a moment before starting it. The wind is stronger than it was an hour ago. You can feel the truck shudder slightly. A tremor through the frame, the body trying to hold against a pressure that is constant and patient and not interested in your plans. You watch a tumbleweed cross Main Street. 3 of them, actually, bumping against the curb in front of the Rexall and then dislodging and rolling on. Behind them, fine dust is moving across the asphalt surface like smoke. The Dunlap car is still parked in front of the hardware store. Through the window you can see Clara Dunlap in the passenger seat, and even from this distance through 2 dusty windshields you can see that she is not looking at anything. Not the street, not her children, just the dashboard. the blank fixed stare of someone who has already left mentally and is waiting for the body to follow. You think about what she is leaving, the farmhouse where she set up her first real kitchen, the kitchen garden she put in 3 springs in a row, losing it twice to dusters and putting it in again, because that is what you do. The graves of her parents, both of them, in the county cemetery east of town. You do not leave graves. When you go, the graves stay. That is a thing nobody talks about when they talk about the families that are leaving, but you think about it. All those graves in all those county cemeteries belonging to families who are gone west and are not coming back. All those people buried in ground that their descendants no longer own. Your own grandparents are in that cemetery. Your mother's mother, who died the year before you were born, and whose name you carry as your middle name. Henry, Elias Henry Cutter. Your grandmother, Ruth Henry, buried under a stone your grandfather carved himself, which means it is uneven and slightly misspelled. Ruth Henry Cutter, beloved, 1871 to 1920, and which your father straightens every spring when the freeze-thaw tilts it. Who will straighten that stone when you're in California? You start the truck. By the time you get back, your father has found his way out to the north fence line. He is standing at the drift, or what you can see of the drift, which is the top foot of wire rising out of 6 feet of compacted dust. A wall of it running the length of the field, a wall that was not there in October, or not this high, not this solid. You stand next to him and look at it. He bends down and pushes his hand into the face of the drift, not tentatively, the full hand, all the way to the wrist, feeling. The dust accepts him the way cold water accepts an arm, flowing slightly, reforming. Cold, he says, deeper than the sun gets. He pushes his arm into the elbow. Dry. He pulls his arm out. His sleeve is brown to the elbow. He looks at it for a moment, the way you look at things when you're looking at them but thinking about something else. We could dig it out, you say. He looks at you, not dismissively. He looks at you the way a man looks at his son when he is deciding between the real thing and the easier thing. There is more coming tonight, he says. Which is true. 3 days, the radio said. And if you spent a week digging out the wheat and the wind came again, you would be buried again and again. But here is the thing about farming. Here is the thing that is in your blood now, the same way the dust is in your lungs. You cannot not try. Every farmer who has ever stood in front of a ruined field has thought some version of next year, some version of we will try again, because the alternative is not trying again, and not trying again means this was the last time, and the last time means that everything, your grandfather's 160 acres, your father's back, your childhood, your name in this county, meant nothing. You get down on your knees and start digging with your hands. The dust is cold and dense and packs against your palms. Your fingers find a layer about 18 inches down that is harder, more compacted, where the wind drove the dirt at some particular velocity that made it dense as wet clay. You work through it. Your knuckles scrape. The crack on your left thumb opens again and starts to bleed. A thin line that the cold air dries almost instantly. 2 feet down, 2.5. You're on your elbows now, head inside the drift, your father standing above, and the cold dark pressure of 2 feet of soil above you is not comfortable, and you do not think about how it would feel if the drift were to shift and close. Then your fingers find something, a stem, a single thin stem, 1/2 inch tall, the colour of pale straw. You can barely feel it. You close your fingers around it as gently as you can. It bends but does not break. There is give to it, the soft give of something living. You pull your arm out. You're holding 2 inches of winter wheat, alive. You show it to your father. He looks at it for a long time. His face does something complicated. The face of a man who wants to feel hope and is afraid of what hope costs. He takes the stem from your hand, holds it between his finger and thumb, nods once very slightly, then he puts it in his shirt pocket. You dig out 3 more while the light is still good, all alive, all 2 feet below the surface, below the line the sun reaches, living in the cold dark, waiting. There is a lesson in this that you do not examine too closely, because if you examine it too closely, you will have to admit what it means about your own situation. That night at supper, your father says, "I am going to dig out the north section this week." He says it to his plate. He says it the way you say a thing you've decided. Not asking, not explaining. Decided. Your mother does not say anything, but her hands go still on the table for a moment. Then she picks up her fork again. You say, "I will help you after the chores." He nods. This is the conversation. This is all of it. You will dig out the wheat by hand. You will work in the cold and the wind, and you will move 6 feet of drifted soil, a shovelful at a time, and you will try to save the wheat that has somehow survived, when by every right it should not have. And maybe the wheat will grow, and maybe the wind will come again and bury it, and then you will dig it out again. This is what it looks like to not leave. This is also what it looks like from the outside to a man who has already made a different decision, to be a man who has not yet understood something that he will eventually understand. But that is later. The week passes in the rhythm of physical work, not the satisfying rhythm of a productive farm where your labour moves through the ground and comes back up as food, as cash, as something tangible you can weigh and sell and eat. This is different. This is the labour of simply keeping things from getting worse, the labour of treading water. Your body knows the difference. After a day of real work, real productive work, the kind where you plant a field or cut hay or fix the combine and it runs again, your tiredness is full, complete, the good tired. This tiredness is hollow. You ache just as much. Your back is just as tight. Your hands just as raw. But when you lie down at night, there is nothing behind the tiredness. Nothing you made, nothing better than when you started. Just the same field, slightly more uncovered than it was this morning. You and your father dig for 3 days. You uncover most of the north wheat field. The stems are thin and pale from their time underground, and they bend in the wind with an eagerness that seems almost desperate, leaning toward the sun. There are gaps where the cold got them, patches a yard wide where nothing comes up from the soil. But there are enough surviving plants that you let yourself think it. Maybe this year. On the 4th day, the front comes in. The radio had said 3 days. It is 3 days plus 1 hour. You're in the barn when you hear the change in the wind, the shift from the background hiss to something deeper and more purposeful, and you go to the barn door and look west. The sky has a wall in it, not a cloud. Not a thunderhead, a wall. A solid brown-black vertical mass that covers the sky from the ground to the clouds, so total and so dark that the horizon has simply ceased to exist. There is sky, and then there is wall, and the wall is moving east at a speed that makes your stomach go cold in a way that has nothing to do with the temperature. You have seen dusters before. You have been through bad ones. But there is a size to what is coming that is different. You run for the house. Your father meets you at the porch door. He has already seen it. He is standing on the porch with his hands at his sides and his face turned west, watching it come. There is something in his posture that is almost calm and something in his eyes that is not calm at all. "Get your mother," he says. You go inside. Your mother is in the kitchen, and she has already seen it too. Through the window she wipes down every morning, and she is standing at the counter with both hands flat on the surface, just breathing. "Come on," you say. She picks up the wet cloth she has ready. She always has wet cloths ready now, the way other women keep canned goods ready or clean sheets. She carries them to the windowsills, laying them along the gaps where the light shows through. She's done this so many times that her hands move without her looking, pressing the cloth into the gaps with the heel of her palm, her face turned toward the window and what's coming through it. You help her. The bedroom windows, the parlour. You stuff newspaper into the gap under the front door. You check the wood box, which is full. You check the water buckets by the stove, which are full. Your mother does this automatically before every storm, same as a sailor secures his rigging before weather, same as your grandfather used to say what is done before the storm is done, what is not done before the storm does not get done at all. The light changes first. That is always the first thing, not the sound which is already there, the deepening of the constant wind. The light. The brownish grey of an ordinary dust morning becomes suddenly darker, as if someone has put a dimmer on the sun, and then darker still, and then the peculiar yellow-green light that bad ones have, the colour of something wrong, the colour of air that has been made into something it was not designed to be. Your father comes inside. He is carrying your dog. The dog, a cattle dog of no particular breed, black and tan and missing one ear from a fight when he was young, is not the kind of dog who needs to be carried. He is 9 years old and has been through storms before. But he is shaking in your father's arms with a trembling so fine and so constant that it barely looks like movement, just a vibration running through his body from his nose to his tail, and his eyes are white at the edges. He would not come in on his own, your father says. He sets the dog down on the kitchen floor. The dog goes immediately under the table and does not come out. Then the sound arrives. The sound a big duster makes when it hits a farmhouse is not one sound. It is several sounds in very fast succession. First the wind, which was already there, but now becomes something dimensional, a force you can feel through the walls, through the floor, through your sternum. Then the rattle of every loose thing on the property. The barn door that sticks, which is now swinging hard enough to strain the hinges, the storm windows, the tin roofing on the chicken coop, the truck which you did not have time to put in the barn and which is now being sandblasted on its left side, the paint you cannot afford to repaint being stripped by soil particles moving at 40 miles an hour. Then the darkness, which is not darkness exactly, but the absence of light, brown and total, so that the kitchen window which was providing a thin grey light a minute ago is now providing nothing, black as night at 2 in the afternoon. Your mother lights the kerosene lamp. The lamp makes a small warm circle in the black. You can see your father's face across the table, and your mother's hands and the lamp itself, and nothing beyond the edge of its light. The house feels like the inside of a cave. The house feels like the inside of the drift you were digging with your hands 3 days ago. The sound is so complete and so loud that you do not try to talk. There is nothing to say anyway. You sit around the lamp, the 3 of you and the dog under the table, and you wait. The lamp flame moves. It should not move. The lamp is in the centre of the kitchen table, away from any draught. But the dust pressure is enough to move air through walls, through the gaps you stuffed with wet cloth, through the seams between floorboards, and the flame bends west to east, away from the storm, as if even fire wants to get out of here. Your mother gets up and puts a cloth over the lamp to protect the chimney. The light goes dimmer and more amber. The three of you sit in amber, in sound, in waiting. You do not know how long the worst of it lasts. Your sense of time becomes unreliable in a bad storm. The dark and the sound and the enclosed space do something to your sense of duration. It could be 20 minutes. It could be 2 hours. At some point the light behind the cloth changes from amber to something barely lighter than black, and you think that might be evening coming, which would mean it has been at least 4 hours, which would be consistent with what the radio said about the front. At some point your mother gets up and makes supper, working by lamplight, setting things on the stove, moving between the stove and the table in the small amber circle, as if nothing unusual is happening, as if cooking supper in a house buried in a dust storm is simply what you do at 6 o'clock, which, in 1935 Cimarron County, it is. You eat in the amber. The food tastes of dust. Everything tastes of dust when a big one is running, regardless of how carefully you cover the pots, regardless of the wet cloths. There is no sealing the house well enough. You eat your beans and your cornbread and taste the soil of 3 states in every bite. Your father eats quickly and pushes his plate away and looks at the lamp. $400, he says. Just that. You look at him. That is what we owe. $400. He says it the way you say something you've been turning over for months. The same way he must say it to himself when he is pacing the floor at midnight. And the taxes, and what I owe Gerald Pace for the use of his planter. Your mother has stopped eating. The wheat might come, you say. The wheat is under this. He gestures at the dark window, at the sound, at all of it. The gesture is not angry. It is worse than angry. It is resigned. Whatever we uncover this week is under another 2 feet tonight. Even if it comes, even if we get a crop, and I am not saying we will, I am saying even if, the price is what it is. The bank does not care about the price. The bank cares about $400. The dog comes out from under the table and puts his head on your father's knee. Your father puts his hand on the dog's head, absently, the way you pet a dog when you're thinking about something else, just the weight of your palm on the soft fur. The dog leans into it. The Hendersons went, your father says. I know. Walt Henderson is not a fool. Walt Henderson farmed that section since before you were born. He's not the kind of man who leaves easy. You do not say anything to this. I talked to him. Before he went, he said James. He said, and here your father pauses, because he does not often say his own name. It sounds strange coming out of his mouth the way it was inside Walt Henderson's. He said, James, there is not enough here any more. He said that as long as we stay, we're telling ourselves a story. And the story is not true. The lamp flickers. A story, your father says. The sound outside has not lessened. The house is shuddering now in a way it usually does not. A tremor in the walls that you can feel in the soles of your feet through the floor. The house being pressed and pressed by wind and weight of soil and the sheer mass of what is moving across the land tonight. Your mother gets up and takes the plates to the basin. She does not say anything. She washes the plates in water the colour of tea and sets them in the rack, and dries her hands on the kitchen cloth, and folds the cloth precisely. The edges are lined and hangs it on the rack. She does all of this with her back to you. When she turns around, her face is very still. I have been praying for rain, she says, for 4 years. Neither you nor your father speaks. I have prayed every night. I have prayed at church and on my own, and I have asked and asked. She looks at the window, the brown-black nothing on the other side. I think perhaps God is trying to tell us something. Your father closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them, he looks at you. You will have your own farm some day, he says. Just not this one, not here. And that is when you understand that it is not a question anymore, that at some point during these 4 years, during the pacing at midnight and the letters from the bank and the dead cattle and the buried wheat, the question became a conclusion. And tonight, sitting in the amber dark with the sound of the Great Plains trying to remove itself from the map, the conclusion has become a plan. You are leaving. The thought sits inside your chest like a stone. You expected to feel relief, perhaps, or grief, or anger. You feel something much stranger. You feel a kind of weightlessness that is not quite relief and not quite despair. Like the moment when you have been waiting for something bad to happen, and it finally happens, and the waiting is over. The waiting was its own kind of suffering, and it is done. Outside, the storm runs on. You go to bed eventually, though sleep does not come for a long time, lying in the dark with the sound of the house under pressure, and the wheat you uncovered this week going back under the drift, and the animal's certainty that everything is about to change. The dog comes upstairs and lies down at the foot of your bed, which he never does, and you can feel his warmth through the blanket and hear the fine trembling still running through him. Easy, you tell him in the dark, the way you told the cow. In the morning the storm has passed, but the land has changed again. This is the thing you can never entirely prepare for, no matter how many times you've seen it. You know the storms come. You know they cover things. But the specific geography of what has moved and what has not, what has been buried and what has been uncovered, is different every time, and the change is always more than you expected. The north fence line is gone, not just buried. The wire is there, you can find it if you dig. But the posts have been pulled from the ground by the weight of moving soil, drawn horizontal, the fence now lying flat under 4 feet of new drift. Your father's disc plough, which he had parked along the east wall of the barn because the barn was full, is buried to the tongue. The truck, which you left in the yard, and you knew better, but there was no time, has a 2-foot drift against its windward side, and a fine coating of soil on every surface, inside and outside, and when you open the door the floor mats have 1/2 an inch of panhandle on them. You stand in the yard and look at the land. There's a particular beauty to it, in a way you resent. The drifts are smooth and continuous. Curves of brown and tan that look almost like snow drifts in their shapes. The light on them in the early morning is clean and angled, making the shadows precise. If you did not know what you were looking at, if you had not spent your life on this land, you might think it was beautiful, an abstract landscape, a desert from somewhere exotic. But you know what is under it, under the drift where the fence used to be, the wheat that was alive 3 days ago, under the drift against the barn wall, your father's disc plough, the $400 one, now half buried in soil, under the smooth brown expanse of the north field, the topsoil that took 10,000 years to build, and that 2 decades of farming and 5 years of drought have put in motion. You get the shovel, not because you think it will make a difference now, not because you believe that digging out the wheat one more time after 2 feet of new drift is a rational act. You get the shovel because your hands need to do something, and standing in the yard looking at the changed land is not something you can do for more than a minute without going somewhere very dark inside. Your father comes out and stands next to you. He looks at the field. "Leave it," he says. You look at him. "Just leave it." And he goes back inside. You stand there with the shovel in your hands for a long time. The shovel is a number 2 round point hickory handle, worn smooth at the grip from years of use. Your grandfather used this shovel. You can see the wear pattern on the grip, the places where the wood has gone almost black from the oils of 2 pairs of hands before yours. You put it back against the wall of the barn. The next days have a particular quality to them that you will spend the rest of your life not being able to describe accurately. They are very ordinary on the surface. You do the chores. You milk the 2 remaining cows. You feed the chickens what is left of them. You eat the food your mother makes. But underneath the ordinary is something that was not there before the storm, something that your fathers leave it installed in the daily routine, and it changes the texture of everything. You are doing the work of a farm that you are leaving. The chores are now a kind of farewell, or the rehearsal of a farewell. Each morning's milking, possibly the last, or the second to last, or the 10th to last. You start noticing things you've never consciously noticed before. The way the light comes through the east window of the barn in the morning, a long rectangle of it moving across the floor as the sun clears the horizon, catching the dust motes suspended in the air so that the air itself looks solid, looks inhabited. Your grandfather built this barn to the east-west axis so that it caught morning light, and you have walked through that rectangle of light every morning for 23 years without ever thinking about it. The sound the pump makes, a particular double syllable, the upstroke and the downstroke that is as familiar as your own voice. You pumped this handle before you were big enough to get purchase on it, standing on a box your father made reaching up. Your children, if you had children, would pump it next. There will be no children pumping this handle. The loose board in the parlour that needs a specific angle to walk across without it speaking. You learned this angle when you were 4 years old and snuck downstairs at night to see if there was anything good in the kitchen. You know this board's voice better than most people you've met in your life. You are learning the house by losing it. Your mother begins sorting things. She does not announce this. She does not make a list or call a family meeting. One morning you come in for lunch and the parlour has been reorganised. The shelves reduced from 3 rows of objects to 2, and on the kitchen table there is a cardboard box with things in it that you do not look at too closely. Then another day the bedroom closet has been opened and the clothes assessed, and there is a smaller pile on the bed from which your mother is working, folding things with a precision that is not efficiency, that is something more like attention, folding things the way you pay attention to something you are losing. On a Saturday afternoon your father hitches the team. There is still the team, 2 work horses named Jack and Dozer, old and thin but still working, and drives them out to the south field and back. Just that. Out and back. Not working. Not ploughing or dragging or doing anything productive. Just driving the team in the familiar patterns of the field. You watch from the barn doorway, not understanding what you're seeing for a moment, and then understanding exactly. He is saying goodbye to the horses, or the horses are saying goodbye to the field. Or both. You do not know what horses understand, but you know that Jack and Dozer know this land the way your father knows it, in the body, in the patterns of turning at the row end, in the specific resistance of this soil at this depth. Whatever it means to a horse, this was their work too, their lives too, and they are not going to California. Nobody can afford to haul horses to California. The horses will be sold for what they will bring, which at the Cimarron County sale in March of 1935 will be almost nothing. Your father drives them out and back, and then brings them in and puts them in their stalls, and spends an extra 20 minutes with them that evening, brushing them down in the way he does not usually take time for. You say nothing about this. There is a particular kind of pain that you do not look at directly. The auction is on a Tuesday. Auctions have been happening all over the county for 2 years. You've been to several as a bystander, watching other families' things go under the auctioneer's hammer for a fraction of their worth. It is the economic law of the disaster zone. Everything is for sale, and nobody has money to buy anything, so the prices are insane. A plough worth $100 goes for 8. A cream separator worth 40 goes for 3. Furniture, tools, the accumulated equipment of a farm built over 30 years, dispersed in an afternoon for the price of a week's groceries. When it is your auction, it is different. The neighbours come. That is the thing you did not fully expect. Not to buy, necessarily. They have no more money than you do, but to come, to be present. Mrs. Gerald Pace brings a cake, which she sets on the tailgate of your truck without ceremony. Harold Mott drives over with his son, and they shake your father's hand for a long time. Harold's big, rough hand closed around your father's, neither of them saying much. Old Pete Sanchez from the section to the south, who has been here since before your grandfather, who has seen everything this land has to offer, and seen a good deal of it taken away, stands near the fence and watches the proceedings with an expression that is very hard to read unless you have lived here your whole life, at which point it is not hard to read at all. It is respect. It is the recognition of a man watching another man go through something that has not broken him, or not yet, or not entirely. The auctioneer is a man from liberal Kansas named Wendell Cooper. He is good at his job in the way that people are good at jobs that require them to be efficient about things that are not efficient. He moves through the yard, calling values in a voice trained to carry over crowd noise, pointing and calling and receiving bids with minimal acknowledgement, moving from item to item with the pace of a man who has many auctions to get through in a season and cannot afford to let any one of them go too long. The disc plough goes for $22. Your father paid $400 for it 4 years ago. $22. The auctioneer calls 22, and your father nods from where he is standing near the barn and the disc plough. The thing that started the $400 debt goes to a man from 3 counties over who arrived in a clean truck and has the look of someone who came to get a deal today and fully expects to. The team goes last. Your father asked Wendell Cooper to do the team last. Cooper agreed, in the way of a man who has done enough of these to know that there is an order to human endurance and that animals at the end of it is a mercy. When Jack and Dozer come out of the barn for the last time, led by your father on a lead line, the yard is quieter than it has been all morning. The people who are there, maybe 30 of them, neighbours and strangers and the man from Liberal who is tallying his purchases, go quiet in the way that crowds go quiet when something happens that recognises itself as significant. Jack is 17 years old. Dozer is 15. They have worked this land since your father bought them. Jack first, then Dozer 2 years later as a yearling who needed training. They have ploughed every field on this farm. They know the property line by instinct. They know your father's voice better than they know anything else in the world. Jack and Dozer stand in the auction yard and they are themselves old, thin, patient, the particular patience of workhorses who have learned over years that standing still and waiting is part of the job, that the work will come when it comes, and until then you stand and you breathe and you take up space. The bidding starts at $15 for the pair. Your father's face is not moving. He's watching the horses, not the bidders, not Wendell Cooper, not the crowd. Just the horses. He is doing the thing you've been doing all week with the barn and the pump and the loose board in the parlour. He is memorising. The horses go for $31 to the man from Liberal, who has 6 other lots tied to his truck already, and will drive them 300 miles back to Kansas and sell them for whatever the Kansas market is bearing this week. Your father does not speak to the man. He hands over the lead line and turns away and goes into the barn, and the barn door sticks the same as always, and he puts his shoulder into it and it grinds shut behind him, and he is in there for 20 minutes while the auction finishes up, and the auctioneer tallies the receipts and people drift away. When your father comes out, his face is the face you've seen every morning for 2 years. Grey. Controlled. The face of someone who has been through something and did not let it win in the way it wanted to win. Total receipts for the auction, $112. Applied against the bank debt, $112. Remaining debt, $288. Plus the taxes, plus the interest that has been accumulating. You do not say this out loud. Nobody says this out loud. You all know it. The truck is loaded over 3 days. This is the process that you have watched other families do, and that looked from the outside like a comprehensible thing. Load the truck, tie things down, drive away. But from the inside it is not comprehensible. From the inside it is a continuous series of decisions about what you are, about what your life has been, about what you are willing to carry into an unknown future, and what you are willing to admit has to stay. Your mother starts with the practical things, the cast iron skillet, the Dutch oven, the canning jars, 3 dozen of them, empty now but washable and refillable, and representing a kind of portable infrastructure. The quilts she made, 4 of them, every piece of fabric in them with a history she could recite if she had to. The family Bible, which has births and deaths and marriages recorded in 3 generations of handwriting on the front pages, ink varying from black to brown to barely visible. Your father takes the tools, not all of them. The box of them is too heavy, too large. He goes through it with a deliberateness that is almost surgical, picking up each tool, holding it, deciding. The hammer, yes. The draw knife, yes. The woodworking plane that was his father's, yes. The set of chisels, most of them. The second hammer, the older one, the one with the worn handle, no. He sets it on the workbench and does not look at it again. You take your things, they do not take long. A working man's belongings in 1935 in Cimarron County are not extensive. 2 changes of clothes. Your good boots, the ones you wear to church, in a bag. The book your teacher gave you when you graduated the 8th grade, which is the furthest you went, which is the furthest most people went. Inside the front cover your teacher wrote, "For Elias, who asks good questions, keep asking them." You fold it into the middle of a shirt so it will not get bent. At the bottom of your box you put 3 things. The first is a photograph. Your family, 1924. You were 12 in the photograph. Your father is younger than you are now. Your grandfather is still alive and standing at the edge of the frame with the expression he always had in photographs. A kind of suspicious squinting at the camera, as if it might be trying to take something from him. Which, in a way, it was. Your grandmother is not in it. She was already gone by 1924. The second is a handful of soil from the north field. You went out the morning before the loading started and dug down with your hands, past the drift, past the dead wheat, to the soil below. Real soil, the kind the grass used to hold, dark and faintly smelling of the organic matter that makes soil and not just ground. You put it in a tobacco tin your father was done with and close the lid. The third is the stem of winter wheat, the one you pulled from the drift 2 weeks ago, the one that was alive. It is dry now, just a pale straw stem, but you put it in the tin with the soil and close the lid on both of them. You do not examine your reasons for this. They do not entirely make sense, and you know that, and it does not matter. On the morning of the loading, April 9th, a Tuesday, the whole enterprise takes on a physical reality that the preceding weeks had kept slightly abstract. The truck parked in the yard is receiving the life of the farm. The kitchen contents go first, padded with blankets and wedged tight. The tools and canning jars and quilts, the headboard of your parents' bed, which will not fit through the truck cab and has to go in the bed of the truck tied to the rails, the mattress rolled and roped on top of everything. The house empties room by room. This is not metaphorical. You watch rooms become rooms and stop being spaces that had particular feelings, particular histories attached to them. The parlour where your grandfather used to sit in the evenings becomes just a parlour. The bedroom where your parents slept becomes just a bedroom with lighter rectangles on the wall where the pictures hung. The kitchen where your mother has made 3 meals a day for 23 years, waking at 4 to wipe it down, becomes just a kitchen with nothing on the shelves and a cast iron hook above the stove where the skillet hung and does not hang anymore. You sweep the floor. This is not rational. The floor is going to fill with dust the moment you leave, and the house is going to be abandoned, and it does not matter whether the floor is swept or not. But your mother hands you the broom. She does not say anything. She just hands you the broom, and you sweep the kitchen floor of the house you grew up in for the last time, pushing the accumulated panhandle toward the door, and you feel it through the handle of the broom, the particular weight and resistance of this specific floor with its specific creaks, and your grandmother's particular notch in the baseboard where she used to prop her broom. You sweep it clean. You put the broom against the wall. You look at the floor. Your mother takes the broom. "That is the Hendersons' broom," she says. "They left it in the yard. I cleaned it up." She takes the Hendersons' broom that she cleaned up and she sets it in the corner of the empty kitchen, as if someone might need it, as if someone might come back. Then you lock the door. Your father nails a board across the front the way they all do, the way every house in this county has had a board nailed across it when the family goes. He has 1 nail in his pocket and 1 nail in his mouth, and he does it with 3 blows of the hammer, the same as always, the same precision he brings to everything, the hammer he keeps. The sound of the 3 blows on the board on the door of his father's house is very loud in the quiet morning. He puts the hammer in his coat pocket. He does not look at the house again. The truck starts on the 2nd try. The engine sounds worse than it did a week ago. Everything sounds worse than it did a week ago. But it starts. You're in the back, riding on the rolled mattress with the dog and 2 feed sacks and the headboard, braced against the side of the truck bed, and your parents are in the cab, and the truck moves down the lane to the road. The same lane you have walked 1,000 times, the same lane your grandfather drove his wagon down when he first arrived, and turns east toward the road that will take you south, and then west. You watch the house until you cannot see it anymore. The board your father nailed across the door is the last thing to disappear in the distance, a pale rectangle against the weathered wood. Then a drift crosses the lane, and the truck goes around the corner, and the house is gone. Route 66 starts to show itself south of Amarillo. You've been travelling 2 days. 2 days in the truck that runs rough, stopping at gas stations every 60 miles to add oil, watching the gauge carefully, your father's hand resting on the dash as if he is feeling the engine's pulse through his palm. 2 days of the flat brown landscape of the Panhandle, fence-lined and windmills and dry creek beds, and the occasional farmhouse with a board across the door, or without even that much. Just abandoned, left open, the door sometimes swinging free. An entire civilization in the process of removing itself. At night you stop in the roadside camps that have grown up along the highways leading west. They are not camps exactly. They are places where the ground is flat enough and people have been stopping long enough that there are tire tracks and cold fire rings, and, in the established ones, a water spigot that may or may not work and a privy that may or may not be worth using. You pull in beside 2 other trucks and a car with Missouri plates, and you eat the supper your mother made from the provision she packed before they left. The cornmeal, the last of the salt pork, 2 cans of beans that were in the house's cellar, and you sleep on the mattress in the truck bed, you and the dog, while your parents sleep in the cab. The dog sleeps curled against your back. His weight is warm and familiar. You stare at the stars, which are very clear out here away from any town, more stars than you remember from the farm, though the farm had no lights to obscure them. Maybe you just never lay on your back and looked before. Maybe you were always too tired. On the second morning you get up before dawn and walk out away from the truck and squat down and put both hands flat on the ground. The desert ground, not your ground, not Cimarron County soil, different, harder, pale, not the dark organic loam of the farm, but a mineral hardpan, reddish in the early light. It does not feel like home, it feels like nothing. It feels like ground that does not know you and has no reason to. You hold your hands flat against it for a minute, feeling it, asking it something without words. It does not answer. You get up and go back to the truck. Route 66 through the Texas Panhandle and into New Mexico is a 2-lane road that the state of Texas maintains with mixed enthusiasm. There are stretches that are decent, gravel over hardpack, and stretches where the dust has reclaimed the road itself, drifted across it in the same way it drifts across everything, and you drive through fine brown powder that billows up behind the truck and drifts back down as you pass. The cars ahead of you are visible only as brown clouds on the road. You leave your own brown cloud behind you, and in the rear-view mirror your father watches it settle and vanish. Other families are on the road, lots of them. This is the thing that surprises you, though it should not. You knew people were leaving. You heard about it at the feed store at church, counted the loaded cars on Main Street. But you thought it would feel like a private thing, a family decision, a solitary exodus. Instead, Route 66 in April of 1935 is a migration. Cars and trucks in a column that has no beginning and no end, all loaded the same way, all moving the same direction, all carrying the same compressed weight of everything that fit, and the heavier invisible weight of everything that did not. A woman in the passenger seat of the car ahead of you is nursing an infant while the car moves. Her head is bent over the baby and she does not look up. The car has a mattress tied to the roof that has shed some of its ties on one side and is drooping toward the running board. The husband is driving. 2 children are visible through the back window, just the tops of their heads, both of them asleep against each other. Behind you, a truck even older than yours is driven by a man alone. No passengers, just the man and whatever is in the truck bed, which from what you can see is not much. A single man. You try to imagine his story and then decide not to. because the imagination of other people's losses is not something you have enough left to spend. In the city of Albuquerque, which is bigger than anything you've seen in your life, a gas station attendant asks your father where he is from. Oklahoma, your father says. The attendant nods. The nod says, that explains it. That explains the loaded truck and the brown dust coating and the faces that have the look of people who've been a long time in motion. The nod is not unkind, but it is not warm either. It is the nod of a man in a city watching people pour through from the disaster zone to the east, and the disaster zone people all look the same, and the attendant has been seeing them every day for 2 years now, and sympathy, real sympathy, runs out when you see it every day. California? The attendant asks. California, your father says. The attendant puts the pump back in its cradle and takes the money your father counts out from the tobacco tin he keeps in his breast pocket. He counts it carefully. The tin is where the money is. The money that is left after the auction, after the gas for 2 days, after the food. The tin is not full. You watch your father count the bills and put the tin away, and you do not do the arithmetic in your head because you have already done the arithmetic in your head, and you know that doing it again will not change the answer. The radio, when you can get it, plays songs. Your mother turns it on in the evenings when you are stopped for the night, and the signal comes and goes, fading and returning with the atmospheric peculiarities of desert radio. And sometimes you get a station from Albuquerque that plays the popular songs, and sometimes you get something from out of Texas that plays only hymns, and sometimes you get nothing but static, and the static is oddly comforting, the same texture as the wind on the panhandle, familiar in its blankness. One evening coming through the Arizona desert, you hear President Roosevelt. You cannot hear all of it, the signal is too intermittent, but you hear enough to recognize the voice and the cadence, the patrician confidence of a man who believes in his country in a way that is almost puzzling to someone sitting in a loaded truck in the Arizona desert having left his grandfather's farm behind. The government has programs. The government has plans. The New Deal is doing things for the country, for the people, for the land. You listen to the radio and feel something that is not anger exactly, not cynicism exactly, just the specific textured distance between what someone says things are and what they actually are. The distance between Washington and the Panhandle, between policy and the sound a house makes when you nail a board across its door. The government also gave your grandfather 160 acres and told him to plough it. So, you do not say this out loud. Your mother is asleep against the window. Her head bumps gently against the glass with every road irregularity. She has not complained once, not once in 3 days of driving and uncomfortable nights and food that is running low, and the dog who keeps trying to climb from the truck bed into the cab through the back window. Not one complaint. You do not know if this is strength or something beyond strength, some register that is past endurance and into the place where endurance has become simply the condition of existence. She woke up once in the night camp outside of Gallup, and you heard her. Lying on the mattress in the truck bed, you heard her voice from inside the cab, a murmur that could have been talking in her sleep but was not. Could have been prayer, which was possible. She had said she'd been praying for 4 years. You lay there and listened to the murmur and the dogs breathing and the far-off sound of coyotes in the desert, and you thought about Ruth Henry in the cemetery in Cimarron County, with the tilted stone and nobody to straighten it. Arizona is long. You did not have a clear concept of how long Arizona is. The maps in school showed it as a shape, a rectangle-ish thing below Utah and Nevada, and to the right of California, and it looked like a reasonable distance. Arizona in reality is a country. It is a vast country of red rock and desert scrub, and distances that trick your eyes, making things look close that are very far, and making you feel very small and very slow. The truck develops a sound in eastern Arizona, a new sound, a knocking from somewhere below the hood that was not there before, intermittent at first and then consistent, a regular mechanical complaint that your father listens to with the expression of a man who knows cars and knows what this sound probably means, and is choosing not to confirm that knowledge just yet. You pull over at a garage in a town called Holbrook. The garage is one building with 2 bay doors, one open, one rusted shut. A man in overalls comes out and your father says, "There is a knocking," and the man wipes his hands on a rag and says, "Open her up." He opens the hood and looks. He does some things with a wrench. He wipes his hands on the rag again. He looks at your father. "Main bearing," he says. Your father says, "How bad?" The man says, "Depends on if you want to go much farther." Your father says, "California." The man looks at the truck and looks at your father and looks at the tobacco tin that your father is already reaching for, the tin that you know is not full. $35, the man says, parts and labour, done by tomorrow noon. Your father opens the tin. You do not look at what is in it. You look at the red rock landscape behind the garage, at the absolute stillness of the desert, at a raven on a fence post 20 feet away that is watching the proceedings with an intelligence that seems inappropriate for a bird. Your father says, "Done." You sleep that night in the truck bed in the garage parking lot. The sky in Arizona is different from the sky in Oklahoma, even in its current state. The Oklahoma sky is a sky that is doing something to you, pressing, covering, moving. The Arizona sky is simply present. The stars are enormous. The Milky Way is a road across the dark, and you can see it the way you cannot see things in the Panhandle anymore through the perpetual dust haze. You lie on the mattress and look at the stars, and the dog is pressed against your left side, and the night is cold in the way the desert is cold. A clean, dry cold that is nothing like the grit cold of home. You think about the wheat stem in the tobacco tin in your pocket. 2 inches of winter wheat, dried now to nothing. Something that was alive 2 weeks ago and is now the most portable version of home you have. You didn't tell anyone about the tin. Your mother would understand it probably. Your father, you're not sure. He left the house without looking back. He nailed the board with 3 blows and put the hammer in his pocket and did not turn around. And there is a kind of completion in that, a kind of discipline that you are not sure you have. You turned around. You watched until it was gone. Maybe that is the difference between you and him. Or maybe the difference is only that he saw things you have not seen yet, and knew something about the cost of looking back that he did not teach you. You will understand it eventually. You close your eyes. In the morning, the mechanic has the truck running cleaner than it has sounded in a year. The knocking is gone. Your father drives it around the block once and comes back with an expression that is the closest thing to relief you have seen on his face in months. The kind of relief that is not happiness, but is the temporary absence of a specific worry. $35. The tin is lighter. The Mojave Desert is the last thing before California. Nobody tells you about the Mojave. Or maybe they did and you did not understand what they meant. You cross into it from the east and it is immediately unlike anything else on the journey, unlike Oklahoma Desert or New Mexico Desert or Arizona Desert. It is another order of emptiness. The scale of it is wrong, too large, the plants too sparse, the light too bright and too white. The road runs through it in a straight line that goes on until it stops being visible, just a grey stripe disappearing into a white shimmer. The truck runs better but is still old and the radiator needs water more than it should. You stop twice to fill it from water cans your mother thought to bring from Holbrook, pouring water into the radiator with the rag wrapped around the cap, the steam coming up into your face with a heat that is worse than the air. Your mother unfolds the map on her lap. She has been the navigator since the second day. She reads maps better than your father, a fact that is true and that neither of them makes anything of. She traces the road with her finger, following the line to the dot that says Needles, California, following it to Barstow, following it west. We're almost to the state line, she says. California. Your father says nothing. You say nothing. You watch the road. The state line is marked by a sign. Welcome to California. And slightly before that, an inspection station, a small building by the road, with a man in a uniform standing outside. He stops your truck. Where are you coming from? Oklahoma, your father says. The man looks at the truck, looks at the mattress on the roof, looks at your mother in the cab and you in the bed and the dog sitting next to you with his ears up. What are you bringing in? Any plants? Any produce? No, sir, your father says, just household goods. The man writes something on a clipboard. He looks at the license plate. Farm workers, he says. I am a farmer, your father says. There is a very specific thing in his voice when he says this. A statement of category, a distinction. The man looks at him. Lots of work in the San Joaquin, cotton, fruit picking. They can always use hands. He waves you through. You pull away from the inspection station and drive down the road and nobody says anything for a long time. A farmer. I am a farmer. Your father's hands are on the wheel and his eyes are on the road, and his face is doing the thing that faces do when they are carrying more than they are showing. The San Joaquin Valley opens in front of you as you come through the Cajon Pass, and it is, in fact, green. Shockingly green. After 5 years of brown, after the 1,000 miles of brown you have just crossed, the green of the San Joaquin Valley in April is almost too much. Orchards, fields, the green of irrigation, of water that is being deliberately applied to the ground, of a landscape being managed rather than abandoned. The hills around the valley are brown, but the valley floor is green, and you have not seen green like this in years, and the seeing of it does something to your chest that you did not entirely prepare for. Your mother puts her hand over her mouth. She looks at the valley for a moment. Then she takes her hand away and looks at the map again and does not say anything. The camp is outside Bakersfield. It is called a camp by the people who live there, by the county, by the workers who pass through, but it is also called other things. On the drive-in you see a sign at the edge of a town that says, "He's not welcome," and you read it and you do not say anything, and your father does not say anything, but you feel his hands tighten on the wheel. You can see the knuckles from the back seat, the whitening of them. Okies! You've heard this word a few times on the road, at the gas stations and the roadside camps. It is what the California people call you. It is not technically accurate. Not all of you are from Oklahoma. But it does not aspire to accuracy. It aspires to category, to the kind of quick classification that allows people who have things to feel comfortable about the people who do not. It is the same impulse that posts a sign. The camp is a collection of tent cabins and lean-tos on a flat piece of ground near a dry riverbed, and there are perhaps 200 families there, which is to say there are perhaps 200 families in a space designed for perhaps 40. The lanes between the dwellings are narrow, packed dirt, and there is one spigot for what you estimate to be at least 100 people, and the smell is the smell of too many people in too little space. A concentrated human smell that is not unpleasant exactly, but is relentless, inescapable. The smell of bodies and cooking and waste, and the particular dry sweetness of canvas that has been in the sun for months. You park the truck and sit in it for a moment, all three of you, and you look at the camp. Then your mother gets out. She walks to the nearest lean-to, where a woman about her age is sitting on an upturned crate, and she says something you cannot hear, and the woman on the crate looks at her, and then looks at the truck, and then says something back, and your mother nods and comes back to the truck. "Third row," she says. "There is space." Your father gets out. You get out. The dog, who has been in the truck bed for 4 days except for the times you let him out to run alongside, drops to the ground and puts his nose down and starts moving in rapid circles, reading the camp, cataloguing it, building a map of this new place out of smell. You unload what you need for the night: the bedding, the food box, the cast iron skillet. While your mother is setting up the cooking fire in the common area, a woman comes over from 2 lean-tos away and says, "Where are you from?" "Oklahoma," your mother says. "Cimarron County." "We are from near Guillemon," the woman says. "Been here 2 months. How is the work?" Or the woman pauses. The pause is doing a lot of work. "There is work," she says. "Not always regular. The growers come and say they need pickers, and you go and you pick and you get paid by the box. Some weeks it is enough. Some weeks." She stops. Your mother stirs the fire. "And the living?" "You get used to it. You get used to everything." She says this the way your mother has been saying things throughout the journey. The flat declaration. You get used to everything, which is the same as your mother's. Keep the table set. Keep the cloth on it. Keep wiping the window sills. The refusal to let the getting used to become a definition. Your father has set up the tent flap, the canvas that will be your shelter tonight. He's standing outside it, looking at it, a temporary structure in a field of temporary structures in California, far from Cimarron County. He looks at it the way you looked at the farm, the way you memorize something, except this is not something worth memorizing. This is just a tent flap in a migrant camp outside Bakersfield. There is nothing here to memorize. But he looks at it, because looking carefully at where you are, even when where you are is not where you wanted to be, is the discipline of a man who has been looking carefully at land his whole life, the habit of attention. It does not turn off when the land turns unfamiliar. In the morning, the labour contractor comes. He comes in a truck, a better truck than yours, and he parks at the entrance to the camp and does not get out. Men go to him. You have been awake since before dawn, and you watch this happen. Men pull on their coats and their hats, and they walk to the truck, and they stand in a cluster, and the contractor says something from the cab, and some of the men get in the truck bed and others turn back toward the camp. You go. You walk to the truck and stand in the cluster, and the contractor leans out of the window and looks at you. "Picker?" he says. "Yes, sir," you say. The "yes, sir" comes out before you have decided to say it, which is something to think about later. "Cotton's done. We're picking apricots today. Pay is 20 cents a box." 20 cents a box. You file this away. You do not know how many boxes you can pick in a day. You will find out. You get in the truck bed. There are 11 other men already there. You recognize the face of one of them from the camp, a man perhaps 10 years older than you, with a hat that was expensive once and is not any more, who nods at you when you make eye contact in the way that men nod at each other in truck beds when they are being taken somewhere to do work they did not choose. The orchard is 8 miles north of the camp. You ride in the truck bed and watch the San Joaquin Valley go by, the green of it, the ordered rows of trees, the irrigation ditches with actual water in them, water that is used for something, water that is not rationed out in buckets from a tank of uncertain quality, but that flows in channels through the ground and makes things grow. You understand riding in that truck bed, watching the valley, something that you could not have understood at home because the frame of reference was not available to you. You understand that the land is not the problem. The land works. Under the right conditions, with the right water, land produces. The problem is the conditions. The problem is the water. The problem ultimately is that you were farming the wrong land in the wrong decade, and the conditions were not there and are not coming back. Not in any time frame that matters to a man who owes $400 and is 49 years old. This is not a comfort. Understanding a disaster is not the same as being protected from it, but it is something. It is a piece of the story that fits. The apricot trees are in full fruit. You have not seen apricots growing before, not on a commercial scale, not like this, and the first thing you notice is the smell. Warm apricots in a California orchard in April smell nothing like anything in Oklahoma. They smell like sweetness that is not apologetic about itself, rich and warm and slightly fermented at the edges where the overripe ones have started to soften. The smell is so foreign and so good that it almost makes you dizzy. You're given a canvas picking bag that hangs from your shoulder and holds perhaps 50 pounds when full, and you are told to pick clean. No stems, no damaged fruit, and you are shown the size you're looking for, and then the contractor drives away and you start picking. Your hands know how to do this. Not because you have picked apricots before, you have not, but because your hands know how to move through a task, how to find a rhythm in repetitive work, how to pick the right one and leave the wrong one and move down the row without thinking about it. You spent your childhood sorting wheat berries from chaff, sorting seed from damaged seed, your fingers learning the feel of right and wrong before your eyes could fully tell them apart. Your hands are good at this. The picking bag gets heavy fast, heavier than you expected. 50 pounds of apricots hung from one shoulder becomes a specific physical presence by the second hour, a weight that is not quite pain but is the prelude to pain. A pressure on the shoulder and the neck and the lower back that you know from experience means that by evening you will be very sore in very specific places. You empty the bag at the collection station at the end of the row. A man with a scale and a tally sheet marks your number and writes the count. 1 box, 20 cents. You pick up the empty bag and go back into the trees. By noon you have picked 7 boxes. $1.40. You eat your lunch sitting under a tree, the bread and cold beans your mother put up for you that morning, and you think about $1.40 and what it represents and what it does not represent, and you think about $400 minus $35 for the garage in Holbrook, minus the gas, minus the food for the road. You do not finish this arithmetic because the arithmetic does not resolve anywhere useful right now. The man with the worn expensive hat sits down near you. He unwraps his own lunch without ceremony. First day, he says. Yes. You will be faster by the end of the week. 7 boxes is slow for a morning. He says it without cruelty, just accounting. You will do 10 by Thursday, 12 by Friday. How long have you been picking? He thinks about this. Since November. Cotton first, then carrots, now this. Before? Before I was a wheat farmer, he says. South of Shattuck, he pauses. You? Cimarron County, he nods. We called them 3-day dusters back home, he says. We had one in November of 33 that was 6 days. 6 days we could not open a door. We had one in March, you say. 3 days. The wheat I had uncovered went under again. He nods again. There will be no going back, he says. That is the thing I had to get clear in my head. I kept thinking, we will save up and go back and it will be better. But there is nothing to go back to. What there was is gone. The topsoil is gone. In some places it is gone down to hardpan. You cannot farm hardpan. You eat your bread. The apricot smell is everywhere. My father thinks he is a farmer, you say. The man looks at you, understanding the weight of this. He is still a farmer, the man says, just not there, not on that land. Maybe on some other land someday if things go right. He wraps his lunchcloth back up, but not there. You pick in the afternoon. The light through the apricot trees is dappled and yellow, and the smell stays warm and rich, and the picking bag on your shoulder is heavier and heavier, and your back is beginning to talk to you in the language of prolonged physical work, the low conversation of muscles that are doing something unfamiliar for too long. By evening you have 12 boxes, $2.40. You climb back into the contractor's truck and ride back to camp in the last light. The valley still green around you, the hills going brown in the evening light, and you think about $2.40 and whether it is enough and what enough means now and whether enough is a category that still applies. The camp at night smells like cooking fires and dusty canvas and the collective exhalation of a couple hundred people trying to make do. There are voices everywhere, conversations in the lanes between lean-tos, someone's radio playing something you cannot quite make out, a child crying, then stopping, then starting again. Your mother has made supper. She made it from what was in the food box and from something one of the women in the camp gave her, a string of dried chilies that she knew what to do with and the beans she brought. And the result is a supper that is not what you would have eaten at home, not the familiar tastes of home, but is hot and filling, and your mother made it, which makes it taste specifically of here, of now, of the first night in the camp in the San Joaquin Valley in California. You eat it and hand the bowl back, and your mother washes it and sets it in the rack and dries her hands on the cloth she hung on the tent pole, the checked cotton cloth that was on the kitchen table in Cimarron County 8 days ago. Still the cloth, still the table, even if the table is a crate, still the cloth. Your father eats without speaking. He has been quiet all day, which is different from the silence of the truck, which had the quality of processing, of thinking. This silence has more sitting in it. There is a man in the camp, your father says finally, who was a dentist back in Kansas. He's picking carrots. You wait. There is a woman who ran a boarding house in Amarillo. She's washing other families' clothes for 15 cents a bundle. You wait. A man who owned his land free and clear, 600 acres in the Texas Panhandle. He sold the whole thing for $2,000 because the bank would not wait. He is over there in the corner lean-to. He is 63 years old. He says all this without emotion, exactly, as if he is reading a list, as if he's filing things, putting them in order. I need to understand this place, he says. You say, yes, sir. Not because there is an answer, because there is not. Because the statement does not need an answer. Your father is a man who, when he has to understand something, says it out loud, as if hearing it in the air confirms that it is real and has dimensions and can be measured. $2.40. The tobacco tin in your pocket, the tobacco tin with the soil and the wheat stem. This 600-acre man in the corner lean-to who is 63 years old. This is real. This has dimensions. You can measure it. The weeks in the camp pass in a rhythm that is not the rhythm of the farm, but is a rhythm. The contractor's truck comes. You go. You pick. The days have names again. have order, have the muscle knowledge of work done in a specific sequence. Cotton in the low fields, apricots in the orchards, tomatoes when the season turns, bent over the rows in the morning heat, the sharp green smell of tomato plant on your hands all day, and into the evening no matter how you wash them. Your picking speed improves the way the man said it would. By the end of the second week you are making what the camp people call a decent day. A decent day in the camp is 60 cents. You are not spending 60 cents a day. You could not. You do not have 60 cents a day to spend. The food is minimal. The camp costs a few cents a day. The rest goes into the tobacco tin, and the tobacco tin is now being used not for money that is going out, but for money that is coming in, which is a change that is not nothing, even though the tin is not full. Your mother has found work too. 3 days a week she does washing for a grower's household in Bakersfield, driving in with the wife of the man who was a dentist, who has a better truck. She comes home from these days tired in a different way than picking tired. She comes home quiet. You do not ask her about it, and she does not say. Once she says, "The woman I work for is very kind." You nod. She asked where I was from. I told her. She said she saw pictures of what it looked like in the newspaper. She said she could not imagine. A pause. I told her it looked just like the pictures. She says this without bitterness, just with the precision of a woman who answers questions accurately. Your father does not pick. He is not built for it in the way you are, or the way you are becoming. His back, which was already bad before all this, the back of a man who has farmed heavy ground his whole adult life, is not good enough for the bent-over work, the bag on the shoulder, the long hours in the field. He knows this and does not pretend otherwise. What he does instead is mechanical. He fixes things. He is the man in the camp who can fix things, who people bring their engines and their broken tools and their seized-up hand pumps to, and he sits on a crate in front of the tent and he fixes them with a focus that is complete and that accounts for most of his waking hours. He does not charge for this at first, and then the man who is a dentist, who turns out to be someone with a clear view of economic reality, tells him plainly, "You are providing a service, James. You need to charge for it." And your father thinks about this, and the next day when someone brings him a carburetor that needs cleaning, he says, 25 cents. 25 cents is enough. 25 cents becomes the price of understanding in this camp that skills travel and land does not. You will not know until much later, years later, how many times this week you will think about. This specific week in April and May of 1935, in the camp outside Bakersfield, when everything you knew got renegotiated into terms you had not chosen. You will think about the man who was a dentist picking carrots. You will think about the 63-year-old man in the corner lean-to who sold 600 acres for $2,000. You will think about your mother's checked cloth hung on the tent pole, and about the raven on the fence post in Holbrook watching you pay $35 for a truck repair, and about the sound of your father's 3 hammer blows on the board across the door of the house you grew up in. You will think about the wheat stem in the tobacco tin, and you will think about one specific evening, in the 4th week in the camp, when you were sitting outside after supper and your father came and sat on the crate next to you and the camp was quiet for once. As quiet as a camp of 200 families gets, which is not very but is enough. And he said nothing for a long time, and you said nothing either. And then he said, "Your grandfather came to Cimarron County with nothing, $60 and a letter from the government." You said, "Yes, sir. He built something. 30 years he built it." You said, "Yes, sir. We lost it in 5. The drought, the prices, the bank." He pauses. "The dust." You said, "Yes, sir, but we are here." He said it the way he said, "Leave it." The way he said, $400. A statement of a fact that has weight, and that he is putting into the air because putting it in the air confirms that it is real. A thing that a man says when he has decided something. We are here, not back there, where there is no coming back from, not anywhere else. Here, in this camp, in this valley, in this state that does not entirely want us but has work that needs doing and will pay 60 cents a day for doing it. Here. He got up after that and went back into the tent. You heard him arranging something inside, the familiar sounds of his hands at work. You stayed outside and watched the stars come out, the California stars above the San Joaquin, and the dog sat next to you and leaned against your leg, and you put your hand on his head the way your father had done when the storm came. The automatic weight of a hand on a warm head. The simple grammar of presence. The tobacco tin goes in your coat pocket every morning and comes out every evening, and you put whatever is in it next to what was in it already. And you do not add it up every night, because adding it up every night is a way of watching something very slowly happen, and it is better to let it happen and check on it less frequently. There is a school in the camp. Not a real school, a camp school. A woman who was a teacher in Kansas runs it in the mornings in the community tent, and the children of the camp go to it and learn what she has to teach them, which is what she knows, which is enough. She teaches them arithmetic and reading and the names of states and rivers, and sometimes in the afternoons she reads to them. Historical things. Things about where the country came from and how it got here. You're too old for the school. But one afternoon you walk past the open tent flap and hear her reading, and you stop. She is reading about the land, about the grassland that covered the Great Plains before the settlement, about the deep roots of the buffalo grass and the blue stem, roots that went down 15 feet, holding the soil for 10,000 years, about how the prairie held itself together through drought after drought, through winds that come every year, through everything because the roots were there. The children in the tent are very quiet. She reads. The grass was the land's memory of how to survive. And when the grass was gone, the land forgot. She closes the book. You keep walking. The land forgot. You take out the tobacco tin. You open it and look at the soil inside, the dark soil from 2 feet under the drift, the soil that held the wheat roots that were still alive when everything else was dead. The soil that does not know it is in California. That does not know it has been displaced 3 states and put in a tin in a pocket. The land forgot. But the land also remembers 2 feet down under the drift, under everything, down where the sun does not reach and the wind does not reach, and where some things are still alive that have no business being alive. You close the tin. You put it back in your pocket. You will leave the camp in September, not leave California. You are not going back. There is nothing to go back to, and your father said it himself. We are here. But in September the camp closes for the winter, and the families scatter to wherever the work is, and the contractor comes one last time and says there is cotton work further south, in the Imperial Valley, and steady work means steady pay, and steady pay means the tobacco tin starts to be something real. You spend 3 years in California before your father has saved enough to rent a small piece of irrigated land in the Sacramento Valley and put in vegetables for the Sacramento market. It is not 160 acres in Cimarron County. It is not the land his father built, but it is land, and he can farm it, and the water is there. He farms it. He is good at it. He is good at it because he spent 30 years learning to farm the hardest possible ground, under the worst possible conditions, and farming in the Sacramento Valley with irrigation is, by comparison, not that hard. He knows soil, he knows water, or the lack of it. He knows the 1,000 ways a crop can fail and the few ways it can survive. He does not talk about Oklahoma, not often, not directly. Once your mother is canning tomatoes, the Sacramento tomatoes, and she has the windows open because it is warm, and the smell of the tomatoes cooking fills the house, and your father comes in from the fields and stands in the kitchen doorway and breathes in, and his face does something that does not quite have a name. Not grief, not happiness, the thing between them that has no English word. He stands there for a moment. Then he goes and washes his hands at the sink. Your mother keeps canning. You go back to Oklahoma once. You're 32 years old. It is 1944 and the war is happening, and you've just finished your service, and you're driving east for reasons you do not entirely understand, going home in the way that people go home when there is no home to go to, going anyway. The government has replanted the grass. This is the thing that surprises you most. All along the drive through the Panhandle, all along the road through Cimarron County, there is grass. The Soil Conservation Service has been planting it for 10 years, working the land back up from hardpan to something the grass can hold. It is not the same grass, not the deep-rooted blue stem your grandfather's plough cut through. It is shorter, thinner, more modest. But it is grass, and it is holding, and the drifts are gone. The sky is blue, actual blue. You stop the car and get out and stand on the road and look at the sky, and it is blue. You've not seen an Oklahoma sky that colour since you were 17. The farmhouse is still there. The board your father nailed across the door is gone, but the house is abandoned. Someone has been in it. You can tell, perhaps seasonally, the way people use abandoned houses. There are beer bottles in the corner of the parlour, and a fire ring in the kitchen that someone put in after the stove was taken. The floor has the particular grime of a place that has not been cared for in years, but the floor creaks in the same place. You stand on the loose board in the parlour and it speaks the same way it always did, the same syllable under your weight, and you stand there for a long moment and let it happen. In the kitchen, the hook above the stove where the skillet hung is still there. The hook your grandmother put in, bent iron, dark with decades of smoke. Nothing on it. You put your hand up and close your fingers around it. It is cold. Just metal. Just an old hook above a cold stove in a house that is not anybody's anymore. You go outside. The north field is flat and covered in short grass. You can see, if you know what you're looking at, the faint undulation where the drifts used to be, the topography of the disaster preserved in the very slight variations in the ground level, like a scar that is healed but not gone. You dig down with your heel, not deep, just the heel of your boot pushing into the soil. The soil is dry, not dead dry, not the powdery, compressed nothing of the drought years, just dry in the way of a place that does not get a great deal of rain, a dry that is ordinary and manageable, the kind of dry that grass handles. You put your hand flat on the ground. It is cold and faintly gritty, and it smells of dry earth and something organic underneath, the faint rich smell of soil that is beginning to do what soil does when left alone. You close your eyes and feel it. The land remembers, not the full memory, not the 15-foot roots and the buffalo grass and the endless sea of blue stem that your grandfather's plough cut open, but something below the surface that is starting again, patiently, in the way that things that have been here 10,000 years are patient. You drive to the cemetery. Ruth Henry Cutter, 1871 to 1920. The stone is tilted again. You straighten it with both hands, working it upright, tamping the soil around its base with your boot. Then you stand back and look at it. Beloved. The misspelled word in your grandfather's carving. The word cut into stone by hands that knew how to build a barn and drive a plough, and were not particularly skilled with the chisel, but tried anyway because someone you love deserves a stone with their name on it, even if the spelling is wrong. Beloved. You stand at the grave for a while. The grass is moving in the wind, which comes from the west as it always has and always will, but now it moves the grass instead of the soil. The grass is doing its work. The grass is holding. You get back in the car, you drive west. It is a long way. It always was. The road back to California is the same road you took in 1935. Route 66 through the Panhandle, through New Mexico, through the long red country of Arizona, through the Mojave, through the Cajon Pass, and down into the Green Valley. The same road. Different car. Better car. A car that does not require checking the oil every 60 miles or listening for a knock in the engine. A car with a radio that works. You listen to the radio through the Mojave. Big band music. The war is still happening in the Pacific and the news is the news. But the music is music. Songs that were not written when you first drove this road. Songs that belong to this decade and not the last one. The apricot smell when you open the window in the San Joaquin Valley is the same. You drive past the place where the camp was. There is no camp there now. The ground is planted in cotton, the rows running up to what used to be the lane between the lean-tos. It is as if the camp never existed, which is also true of a lot of things. Your parents are in the Sacramento Valley. You drive north. When you get there, your mother comes out of the house before you reach the door, the way she always did, the way she always knew the sound of your car engine, which might be the most consistent thing in your life, that your mother has always known when you're coming. She's 57. She looks 57. She looks, you think, like herself. Your father is in the kitchen, sitting at the table, which has a cloth on it. You come in and sit down, and your mother pours coffee. Real coffee. Coffee that tastes like coffee. And you sit across from your father and he looks at you. Really looks at you. The way he looked at the wheat stem in the drift. The careful attention of a man who is checking something for signs of life. You look back at him. You went, he says. It is not a question. He knows. I went. He nods. Once. The same nod as the wheat stem. How is it? The grass came back, you say. He's quiet for a moment. Your mother sits down, her hands around her cup. The grass came back, he says. Not all of it. Not what was there before. But it is holding. He nods again, slower. Good, he says. That is all he says about it. That is the whole of the conversation. But it is the right conversation, the one that needed having, and you both know it. You reached for the tobacco tin in your pocket without thinking about it. You have carried it for 9 years. You set it on the table. Your father looks at it. I want you to have this, you say. He opens the lid. The soil, the wheat stem, dried to nothing but still there, still intact. He looks at them for a long time. Then he closes the lid. He puts the tin in his shirt pocket, the same pocket he put the wheat stem in that morning at the drift in March of 1935 with the front coming. He says, "You are a good man, Elias." And then he gets up and goes back to work because there is always something to do, and the Sacramento Valley does not wait. And being a good man does not mean you get a break from the work. Your mother refills your coffee, you drink it. Outside, the Sacramento Valley is green. Let the sounds of that kitchen settle around you now, not the kitchen in Oklahoma with its empty hook above the stove and its swept floor and the Henderson's broom in the corner, not the camp tent with the checked cloth hung on the pole. This kitchen, your parents' kitchen in California, warm and real with real coffee and the smell of something your mother is going to cook tonight, and the checked cloth on the table that has been on every table your family has eaten at since before you were born. Some things do not leave. Some things you carry, and they do not weigh what you expect them to weigh. The tobacco tin with the soil and the wheat stem, the checked cloth, your grandmother's misspelled stone in the Cimarron County Cemetery, straightened now, the creak of the board in the parlor of an abandoned house in Boise City, Oklahoma. That sounds exactly like it always did when your weight comes down on it, exactly like your father's weight and your grandfather's weight before that. The land forgot, but you remembered. You carried what you could carry, and you came west, and you built what could be built from the materials available. And that is not a small thing in 1944, or in 1935, or in 1906, when your grandfather stood on 160 acres of unbroken prairie and put his hand flat on the grass and felt the roots underneath and decided to stay. You decide to stay too, not in Oklahoma. Not on that land, which is grass again now, which is healing in its own time with the patient metabolism of prairie ecosystems that have 10,000 years of practice. You stay somewhere. You stay present. This is the verb, not the noun, not the place. The verb, to stay, to remain, to continue to be the person who gets up before dawn and puts their hands on the work and does the day and then does the night and then does the next day. The Hendersons did this. Walt Henderson, who your mother told you about at breakfast on a March morning 10 years ago, he loaded his truck and drove west, and he stayed. Present. Somewhere. His wife Doris staying present next to him. Their youngest daughter, born the year the drought started, who has never known a normal year, who's grown up and is growing up in California now, is staying present in a California that did not ask for her but got her anyway. All of them. The woman who ran the boarding house in Amarillo, washing clothes in the camp for 15 cents a bundle. The man who was a dentist picking carrots in the San Joaquin. The 63-year-old man who sold 600 acres for $2,000 and sat in his corner lean-to. All of them stayed present. All of them did the next day and the next. This is the whole of the story, really. This is the thing that the photographs do not capture, and the books, and the government reports, and the soil surveys do not capture. The photographs show the faces, the hollow eyes, the loaded cars, the abandoned houses, and they are true. All of them, every one of them is true. But what the photographs cannot show is the enormous invisible weight of the continuing, the just keeping going, the 1 foot and then the other foot, the grass roots going down 15 feet into the darkness, the wheat stem 2 feet under the drift, still there, still alive. Let the images come slowly now. The checked cloth on the crate in the camp tent, the lamp flame bending west in the storm, the raven on the fence post outside the garage in Holbrook, watching, watchful, patient. The 3 hammer blows on the board across the door, the white of the apple blossoms coming into the Sacramento Valley in the spring, the colour you did not believe until you saw it. The blue of the Oklahoma sky returned. Let these settle. You are not in Cimarron County. You are not in the truck on Route 66 watching the brown landscape pass. You're not in the apricot orchard with the picking bag on your shoulder and the warm, sweet smell around you. You're not any of these things right now. You're here, warm enough, comfortable enough, safe enough. You have what you need. This room, this dark, this quiet. The city, or the town, or wherever you are is doing its nighttime things outside, and none of them require anything from you. Let your hands go loose. Let the picking bag come off your shoulder. Let the shovels and the cracked knuckles and the bank letters and the board across the door and all of it, come off. You have been carrying things tonight that belong to other hands, heavy things. The weight of a drought and a displacement and a whole civilization pulling itself up by its own uncertain roots and moving west. Set it down, just for now. The grass came back. The roots were there, under everything, waiting. Some things go underground to survive. Some things go quiet and still and deep and wait for the conditions to change. This is not weakness. This is the oldest strategy on earth. Let your breathing slow to the breathing of sleep. Let the sounds in your ears become the sounds of somewhere peaceful, some place that the dust never reached, some valley green with the things you remember about green. Let the wheat stem, dried to nothing but still intact, mean what it means. Still here, still present, still capable of meaning something to someone years later, in a tobacco tin in a shirt pocket, on a Sacramento evening with coffee that tastes like coffee, and a mother who knew the sound of your car. Centuries will pass after tonight. The panhandle will be green again, the way it was before. The grass will go down 15 feet. The sky will be blue. Someone will stand in Cimarron County and not know, will have no way of knowing, what it looked like in 1935 when the wall came in from the west and the lamp bent away from the darkness. It will just be sky to them, just ordinary sky. But it happened, and people lived through it. And some of them came back and some of them did not, and all of them stayed present somewhere. Stayed themselves, carrying the tobacco tin, keeping the cloth on the table, wiping the windowsills even when the dust comes in anyway. This is what it means to be from somewhere. Not the place, not the specific geography of a ruined field in a drought year, but the staying, the continuing the next day. Let your body remember how to rest. It knows. It has always known. The day is done, the picking bag is off, the storm has passed. Somewhere west of everything you started with, in a valley green as a promise, the coffee is hot and the cloth is on the table, and the people you love are in the next room doing the quiet things that people do when the work is done. You have earned this. All the way down, down past the drift, down past the dead layers, down to where the roots still go, where the cold is not killing cold but holding cold, where the things that survived are surviving still, patient and dark and deep and waiting. Let sleep find you there. Let it. It is safe there. It has always been safe there. Good night.